We are in the last technical session, practical issues in GST, e-commerce sector. To handle this session, we have very eminent speakers, CA Naveen Rajpurohit. I request CA Manjunath Allur to escort the speaker on dais. I request you to welcome him with a floral bouquet. Also, I have a small announcement to make that we will be having virtual CPE circles in the coming week, at least on 27th, 28th and 29th, so that members who are falling short can actually register and take the benefit out of it. Well, I'll take the privilege in introducing Mr. CA Naveen Purohit, who is practicing in the field of indirect taxes at Bangalore. He is a chartered accountant by profession. He has over 17 years of composite experience in serving large and medium-sized clients in the areas of indirect taxes and mainly involved in indirect tax planning and representation at various levels. He has presented a number of papers on indirect taxes at various platforms. He's worked as a partner of SDU, was a proprietor of Naveen and Rajpurohit & Co. and was a partner in BDO network from 2015 to 2019. As a tax consultant, he's been advising various clients on indirect tax implication, tax planning and compliance aspects concerning the setting up of business operation in India. Mr. Naveen has also managed to serve large engagements in India across diverse industries verticals like manufacturing, retail, real estate, finance, pharma, etc. He has an extensive experience in handling litigation concerning indirect taxes at all levels of adjudication and appeals. His advice covers in-depth legal aspects touching GST, VAT, service tax, profession tax. He is also a member of State Taxation Committee of FKCCI and a member of BCIC, State Taxation Federation Expert Committee. He is also faculty at Bangalore branch at Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has authored a book on e-payment procedure under KVAT law and co-author on KVAT audit and GST published by ICAI New Delhi. Naveen has serviced clients across various industries including retail, real estate, FMCG, ITES and manufacturing. With this brief introduction, I would like to welcome you again, sir. And I would like to hand over you, and I'll not be between the participants and the speaker. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. So I thank Bangalore branch for giving me opportunity to address this August gathering. The topic which is bestowed upon me is practical issues in GST e-commerce sector. So basically, we're going to deal with the e-commerce sector and what are the issues which faced by the e-commerce sector. There are certain issues which even I don't have an answers. So the courts have to look into that one because there are so many issues there. So if I look into e-commerce sector, specifically from the GST angle, you can divide the e-commerce sector into three buckets, or rather you can make it three buckets in the two small buckets. Now three buckets is that the first one where you have the inventory of your own, you sell the goods e-commerce by way of electronic mode. Then what happens? There's a separate, even though you are an e-commerce operator, but you will not be liable to tax under e-commerce sector. You have to normal, like how you are supplying goods, normal dealer will be construed. There are two specific services under e-commerce sector which are covered under section 9 subsection 5 and under section 52. Section 9 subsection 5 specifies certain services where e-commerce are required to pay the tax on behalf of the specified service provider. This is another bucket. The second or third bucket, when you call it, is a TCS. So if you are selling any goods, any dealer or any assessee who's selling goods or services through e-commerce, then there is a TCS which will come into picture. The fourth category, what we can say, is the OIDR, like online database retrieval and access services, OIDR services. Basically, it is from the import. When you're importing the services, then OIDR will come into picture, which is covered under IGST law. Okay, so there are the first category where you have your own inventory, your own goods, and you are supplying the goods through e-commerce. Then neither section 9 subsection 5 will come into picture, nor TCS will come into picture, nor OIDR services will come into picture. So I will not touch upon that category because it's a normal, as a normal SSC where you are supplying goods or services, you are required to charge, pay taxes accordingly. So we'll not get into that aspect. The major two aspect is section 9 subsection 5 and TCS. This is the section 9(5) and 52 is what we are going to look into that e-commerce sector and what are the issues faced by each one of them. So if you see the definition of section 2 subsection 44 defines e-commerce and 245 defines e-commerce operator. What is e-commerce? It says that means supply of goods or service or both, including digital products over digital or electronic network. So what it says, supply of goods or services including digital. So what do you mean by including digital? Digital, that means anything intangible, anything which is intangible, which you call it as a digital, like software or whatever it may be you call it, then even they specifically included that in the definition of a digital. Now, if you look at the definition of goods, goods means anything which is movable property. Movable includes both tangible as well as intangible as well. So these digital projects actually get covered under the definition of a goods. But still, to make it, even though things clear, the lawmakers have included the digital products in the definition of e-commerce, right? So any supply of goods or services or both, including digital products over digital or electronic networks. So any supply which is happening through the digital or through the electronic network, then you fall within the ambit of the definition of e-commerce. Clear? Next is e-commerce operator. Now, who is an e-commerce operator? E-commerce operator means any person who owns or operates on behalf of someone else also, who operates or manages digital or electronic facility. It should be either a digital facility or an electronic facility or a platform for e-commerce. For e-commerce is what? It is again supply of goods or services through the e-commerce platform. Is that clear? So any person who manages, who owns, who operates the e-commerce activity through the digital, then he'll be construed to be an e-commerce operator. Am I clear on this? Now let's get back to section 9 subsection 5. What does section 9 subsection 5 says about? It says that government may, on the recommendation of the council, specify category of services. So it's say by virtue of a notification, they can specify category of services. As on date, we have a 4 category of services. A notification was issued. I'll come to that later point of time. Okay. The tax on intrastate supply. Please understand, section 9 subsection 5 will get invoked only if this is a intrastate supplies of which shall be paid by electronic commerce operator if such services are supplied through it. Okay, the supply has to be through the e-commerce operator, then all the provision of the act shall apply to such electronic operator as if he is the supplier of the said goods or services. Please understand, what are the criteria they have said? That one, as under reverse charge mechanism, specifically you want to say as a reverse charge mechanism, I am required to pay under section 9(5) that any person who supplies the goods through the electronic commerce operator, then as an e-commerce operator, I deem to be construed as a service provider or a supplier of a goods, and then I have to pay the tax and not the supplier of the goods or a services. Is that clear? Okay. Where an electronic commerce operator does not have a physical presence, there is a proviso to section 9(5). It says that where if you don't have a presence, physical presence, then your representative or an agent on your behalf can discharge the liability. That means if I am registered in the state of Karnataka and if I am supplying any goods or services in the state of Tamil Nadu, then either I have to myself get registered over in that state, or I have to appoint some representative or an agent to discharge the liability. Where an electronic commerce operator does not have any physical presence in the taxable territory, also he does not have any representative in the said territory, then he shall appoint a agent or a person to discharge the liability of the e-commerce operator. So section 9.5 speaks about that much only. Now there is a beautiful advanced ruling which came recently in case of multiverse. This is a Karnataka advanced ruling authority which says that through it means what? Because if you look into section 9 subsection 5, it says that any supply of goods or services has to be through the, on account of e-commerce operator, means through the e-commerce operator, then only the definition of e-commerce operator comes into picture and he is liable to pay the tax. Now here, in case of multiverse, what happens is that there is an app which is developed by the multiverse. Okay, it's a digital app which is developed by the multiverse where they facilitate the business transaction of goods or services. Is that clear? They facilitate the business transaction between the supplier as well as the service receiver. They only facilitate. The question, because here cab operator is a notified or a specified services. So what they do, they provide the drivers or the whoever cab operator, the cab driver and the customer who wants to take the service of this one. They don't have any control on neither on the driver nor on the customer. It is only facilitate to both of them to meet each other and pay the consideration, whatever it may be, whatever consideration they can pay. They went before the advanced ruling authority. What advanced ruling authority said that the authority examined section 2 subsection 44, 9.5, 245 said that electronic commerce operator means any person who owns, operates or manages. So is this multiverse has developed the digital e-commerce? Yes, they are covered in the definition of 244. Are there e-commerce operator? Yes, there is an e-commerce operator. But he says the another criteria is that the third condition is that must be through an electronic commerce operator. What do you mean by through? You know, the word through, which is specified under subsection as 5 section 9, it says that it has to have an end-to-end transaction. Okay, it has to have an end-to-end transaction. The multiverse should have a control on that, because the advanced ruling authority said that, boss, as if you are providing the services and you have to ensure that service is fully completed. Are you getting a point? Right? So even though you fall within the definition of a e-commerce, even though you fall in the definition of an e-commerce operator, even though there is a supply of goods or services that are happening, but it is not happening through the e-commerce. Through it means end-to-end transaction, it is not completed. As a digital e-commerce operator, my job is to make the seller and the buyer to meet each other and they can carry out the transaction. That's all. My job ends over there. Whatever the charges, subscription charges which I collect from the customers or from the service receiver, on that I will pay the GST. But do I follow the definition of e-commerce operator under section 9 subsection 5? The advanced ruling said no, because it is not through it. That means it is not end-to-end transaction. That means the e-commerce operator doesn't take the ownership of providing that services. I hope you're getting a point, right? So therefore, 9.5's conditions are not satisfied. They are not an e-commerce operator liable to pay tax under section 9 subsection 5. Clear? Everyone? Understood? Right? Next. So they have examined the notification, because they are also into radio taxi, they're into these taxi businesses. So they looked into everything. The authority observed that the applicant, because of their unique business model, merely connects the driver and the passenger and their role ends on such connection, do not collect the consideration, have no control over actual provision of service by the provider, do not have the details of the right. Thus, section 9 subsection 5 condition is not satisfied, and therefore they are not covered in the, they are not liable to pay tax under 9.5, right? So what is the notification issued under section 9 subsection 5? So if you see 9.5, it says that on the recommendation of the council, the government will issue the notification of a specified services. What are the specified services? They have issued 4 categories of services under the law. The first one is that Service by way of transportation of passenger. Service by way of, transportation of passenger. If it is a transportation of passenger, not covered under section 9, subsection 5. Okay. Service by way of transportation of passenger by radio taxi, motor cab, maxi cab, motorcycle. They have inserted omnibus or any other motor vehicle. That means even the auto rickshaw, the services has been brought within the ambit of this e-commerce operator under with effect from 1/1/2022. Okay. So exemption notification has been amended. It says that passenger transport service through non-AC carriages, metered cab or auto rickshaw, including e-rickshaws, would not be exempt when such services are provided through e-commerce operator. That means Ola Auto, if you go and take an auto rickshaw, there is no tax because the service is already exempted under the law. But if the same service, if it is go through the e-commerce operator, then there is a tax will come into picture, and e-commerce operator has to discharge the tax liability. For this also there is an issue which I'll cover it later. So whether e-commerce operator providing services by way of transportation of passenger by radio taxi required to register and pay tax. Now here, if you see section 22(1) as well as 24, clearly says that e-commerce operator are required to get themselves registered under the GST law. So it's a mandatory for e-commerce operator to register, right? But whether the service provider also required to register under the e-commerce operator, there's an exemption notification is issued. It says that up to 20 lakhs, you're not required to get yourself registered under the GST law. Now, services by way of providing accommodation in hotels, inns, guest house, clubs, campsite or other commercial places meant for residential or lodging purposes, except where the person supplying such service through electronic commerce operator is liable for registration. What does it say is that if there is a services which is provided by way of accommodation in hotels, like you can see Make My Trips and all those things, which also provide the accommodation of hotels through that. Okay. If the service provider is liable to register under the GST law, then e-commerce operator is not liable to pay the tax. Apart from that, they are liable to pay the tax. That means if the hotel, inn, guest, everything whose turnover is below 20 lakhs, or they are not liable to register under the GST law, then e-commerce operator is required to discharge his tax liability. Otherwise, normal hotel or inn or guest, they will discharge the liability, and the liability is not fastened on the e-commerce operator. They are not liable to pay any taxes on. Clear? Next, services by way of housekeeping such as plumbing, carpentry, etc. Like you have this urban cladder, right? So the services which are provided by them, e-commerce operator is liable to pay the tax. However, if the service provider is liable to get himself registered, there is a liability under section 22 if his turnover exceeds more than 20 lakhs, then if he is registered assessee, then e-commerce operator is not required to pay any taxes. Otherwise, e-commerce operator have to discharge the tax liability. Clear? So there's only two. One is with respect to hotel accommodation, and with respect to housekeeping services, the registration will come into picture. Otherwise, in respect of transport of passenger, registration criteria has not specified under notification. But however, there is a exemption notification that up to 20 lakhs, you can avail the exemption for the service provider. Next is supply of restaurant services. Other than services supplied by restaurant, eating joints located at a specified premises. So what do you mean by specified premises? The law says that where the accommodation cost or a one unit is more than 7,500 per unit per day or equivalent, then they are you are not covered under e-commerce operator. Otherwise, any kind of restaurant services provided through e-commerce operator, then e-commerce operator is required to pay the service tax. Is that clear? Everyone? Right? So there are four categories where e-commerce operator are required to pay the tax and not the service provider. Now let's get into the TCS, which covers under section 52, tax collection at source. The section starts with notwithstanding anything contrary contained in this act. So whatever is contrary to the act, If these conditions are satisfied, then you please come under section 52. What does it say? Every electronic commerce operator, not being an agent, he should not be an agent. If he's an agent, you're out of the section 52. Not being an agent, shall collect an amount calculated at a rate not exceeding 1%. So they have given a notification stating that 0.5% is the rate of tax, that is TCS. So CGST is 0.5%, SGST will also be a 0.5%, as may be notified by the government, of the net value of taxable supplies. Please understand, he has to pay tax on the net value of taxable supplies. What is the net value of taxable supplies? The explanation says that the aggregate value of taxable supplies of goods or services or both, that is, the whatever the supplier has supplied through the e-commerce operator, like for example, goods. Okay, whatever the goods are supplied through the e-commerce operator, the supplier, the aggregate value of that, plus when the goods are again comes back, like you have seen Amazon, all those things, where the customer returns, they are not satisfied, cash on delivery, not happy with the goods, they again return back. Okay, so reduce that amount, and the balance amount you are required to pay the TCS at 1%, that is 0.5% CGST and 0.5% at SGST, and pay tax remit to the government. So the amount collected, okay, the TCS, that is e-commerce operator, is required to file the GSTR 8, okay, whatever the tax which are been collected by the e-commerce operator, that will get reflected in the electronic cash ledger. Please understand, it will be get reflected in the electronic cash ledger and not as a input tax credit or under the electronic credit ledger. So whatever the amount deducted by the e-commerce operator, whatever deducted, and if he has filed GSTR 8, then it will get reflected in the cash ledger. Now, if there is a mismatch, between the turnover declared by the supplier of goods and the turnover declared by the e-commerce operator, then that mismatch have to be reconciled. If it is not reconciled, then the addition, whatever the difference value is there, will get added in the hands of the supplier, and the supplier has to pay the tax along with the interest. Right? This is all overall provision of the TCS, where you also required to file the annual return and all those things. Let's not get into that. Let's come to the issues. Okay. Registration. Now, if you see, section 24(9) requires a compulsory registration. Okay, if you are supplying goods or services through the e-commerce operator, there is a compulsory registration is required. So, person who supplies goods or services or both, other than covered under section 9(5), because section 9(5) is a specified services which is already covered over there, through such electronic commerce operator who is required to collect tax at source under section 52, but under notification number 65/2017, there is an exemption only for the service provider, but there is no exemption for the goods supplier. What does it mean? That if a service provider turnover is below 20 lakhs, then there is no mandatory for him to get himself registered. Are you getting a point? Even though e-commerce operator I'm selling or providing the services through the e-commerce operator, but still, if my turnover is below 20 lakhs, then I don't have to get registered. But if I'm supplying goods, then it becomes a mandatory registration, even there is a 1 rupee also. So this is not covered. So this is the difficulty which is faced by the e-commerce operator. The small suppliers of goods are not able to supply the goods through e-commerce operator. Okay. Composite scheme. Now, if you see composite scheme, it is available for both service provider as well as the supplier of goods, 50 lakhs or 1.5 crores. There is an exemption available. Composition scheme available. But if you are supplying through the e-commerce operator, even if you are registered a composition scheme, then you will be out of the composition scheme. You are not permitted to supply goods or services through e-commerce operator if you are a composition dealer. This is also the difficulty which is faced by the e-commerce operator. So the lot of representation has been made to the council. Now, this is a 49th meeting, not 40, in 49th meeting, They have held that for composition supplier of goods or services from 1st October 2023, they'll allow the composition dealer also to supply goods or services through the e-commerce operator. Now take a scenario. I'm a composition dealer, it's a live case, where I supplied, by whatever reason, I supplied through e-commerce operator, right? Once you supplied through the e-commerce operator, your registration, your composition scheme is, you're out of the composition scheme. Then what happens? From that month onwards, you have to pay the full rate of tax. Especially these small cake shops, all these people where you're required to pay from the day one in the month in which you supply the goods through e-commerce operator. So be careful if any composition dealer is supplying goods or services through the this one. Place of business and cancellation. Now the major problem which is faced by the e-commerce operator is the place of business, because every state, if you're supplying the goods, then you have to get yourself registered. The e-commerce operator is required to get himself registered in all the states. Getting registration is not a big thing. They have registered. But even the supplier who's supplying the goods, right? Even he also have to get registered in that particular state. He also have to get registered in the particular state. Assuming even he get registration in the particular state also, but because there is no manpower who is located, because whatever the goods which are stored in the warehouse of the e-commerce operator, the supplier is required to mandatorily get himself registered in that particular state. Take a scenario in case of an Amazon. If I am a dealer of a mobile phones, which I supply the goods through Amazon, right? Now Amazon have a location in the state of Maharashtra. So what I do, I supply the goods. Amazon will keep those goods in its warehouse. So I'm permitted, I have to get myself registered in the state of Maharashtra. Now I don't have manpower to recruit over there because of the cost and all those things. Margin is pretty low. Department comes up there, state that there is no business which has been carried out, and therefore under section 29 or under rule 22, they will cancel the registration. Right? The law under rule 22, if you see, under rule 21A sub rule 2, without giving any opportunity of being heard, they can suspend the registration. Even though there are court decisions which clearly says that an opportunity must be given, you cannot cancel the registration. But still, across India, all the supplier of goods, basically the goods, they get their registration cancelled, or their registration is suspended, and they have to run here and there. So be careful with respect to, this is one of the major issues which also faced by the e-commerce operator. Next is TDS versus TCS. So if you see under income tax law, recently in 2020, there's a section 194O has been inserted, which says that if you're an e-commerce operator, then TDS will come into picture at the rate of 1%, right? Clearly says. Now I'm also TCS. So there is a tax collection at source is also there, and there is also TDS which is hitting on the e-commerce operator. This is specifically with respect to e-auctioneer. Okay? If you are an e-auctioneer, if you look into the definition of agent, I'll come to that. E-auctioneer have made a lot of representation that was, I do not fall with the definition of e-commerce operator because I am not an e-commerce operator, I'm only a facilitator. Through the portal, I'm only facilitate the buyer and the seller, auctioneer and the auctionee, to sell the goods or a service, to sell the goods. CBDT circular says that the e-auctioneer conducts e-auction services for its clients and is responsible for the price discovery, then you are a e-commerce operator. So please tell me that any e-auctioneer, if he is doing an auction activity, then will he not get to know the price? The moment he gets to know the price, then the CBDT says that you are covered under e-commerce operator. But if you see the definition of agent, for the purpose of GST law includes the auction. It includes the auctioneer also. And if you see section 52 subsection 1, to fall with the definition of TCS, okay, you should not be an agent. The moment you are an agent, then TCS will not come into picture. That means e-commerce operator is not required to do the TCS. Is that clear? Tax collector at source is not required to do. So Under GST law, it is possible that a particular activity can be out of the e-commerce operator business. That means TCS, there's no required to collect the tax at source. But under the income tax law, there is a possibility that TDS will come into picture. Okay? Department will turn around and say that you have done 1% TDS under e-commerce operator under the income tax law, so therefore you are required to do here also. The possibility of notices which is going to be get issued. So if you see the circular, it says any of the A to F, any of the condition if you're not satisfied, then you are covered under the e-commerce operator. So this is a specific case versus TDS versus TCS. Now in previous, Hanish was addressing on the clinical establishment. Well, let us take one example, Practo or some diagnostic, there are so many diagnostic apps which are available. A patient get himself registered with an app, okay, for diagnosing or for the purpose of doctor. The app in turn have the tie-up with so many diagnostic center. So the patients register himself. The app says that, boss, you go to this diagnostic center, get your things, all the details. From here, app send the details to the diagnostic center. Diagnostic center send the samples. Then in turn, what I'll do, I'll send it to the doctors or the radiologist to read, which are appointed. I have appointed them as on a retainer basis, where they read the activity, okay? Whether this is scan, these things, all those things are there. Now, as an app, do I fall in the definition of e-commerce operator? Right? Is there a TCS which is come into picture? Am I required to do the TCS over there? Are you getting a point? Right? So, if you see the definition of a healthcare services is exempt under the GST law by virtue of entry number 74, notification number 12/2017, clearly exempt healthcare services from the levy of GST. Healthcare services, there are so many activities if you carry out, means any service by way of diagnosis or treatment or care for illness, all those things if you carry out, then you are out of the, fall in the definition of a healthcare services. Next, can this app developer or the e-commerce operator, can it be called as a clinical establishment? Right? Can it be called as a clinical establishment? If you see that definition, clinical establishment means a hospital, a nursing home, clinic, sanatorium, or any other institution. Says any other institution by whatever name called that offers services or facilities. That offers services or facilities. Is this app is offering services or facilities with respect to the diagnosed healthcare services? Yes or no? Right? So therefore, it is possible for one to argue that it is a clinical establishment and therefore not liable to tax. Are you getting a point? Right? Got it? So, the clinical establishment means it can be a hospital or it can be any other institution. Law does not say that it has to be a building and all those things. It says it can be a hospital or it can be any other institution. If I apply aegis generis, then follow what is specified over there. Here, in this transaction, the app developer or the person e-commerce operator takes all the responsibility for the diagnostic center. In the sense, whatever the patient gets his diagnostic done at the center is not analyzing anything. Center only sends the reports. The reports are given to the radiologist or the doctor who have no connection with the diagnostic center. They give the reports, then I in turn give to the patients. Right? So it is the responsibility of the app or the e-commerce operator, and therefore you are not covered under the definition of TCS requirement and you are not liable to pay the TCS, e-commerce operator. One argument. The second argument, that you are an agent. What department is turning around saying that you are an agent who's acting on behalf of the customers or on the diagnostic center because you have tied up with so many people, and therefore your commission you pay the tax. Healthcare services anyhow it is exempt, but the service charges whatever is there you're going to charge, you pay the tax on that. So what is the argument you can that if you look into the sections 9.5, I have covered under 9.5, no I'm not covered. If I covered under 52.1, that I have to supply those goods through the e-commerce operator. That means I have to take the responsibility of everything from one to one, and I have to provide the services to the patients. But here, I have taken the entire control. I have appointed the radiologist. They are not responsible for the patients if something goes wrong. If there is any error, it is the responsibility of the e-commerce operator. Therefore, not liable to tax. Getting a point? Not liable to tax. Now, this service charges what I charge, will it liable to tax? The answer is, it covered under composite supply. It is covered under composite supply. So, if the basic is exempted, even the other service charges also should be exempted because it's a composite supply and therefore not liable to tax. Possible argument. Got it? Everyone? So, to give the support, so there's an advanced rule in Karnataka which says that services by way of diagnosis of illness, deformity, abnormality or pregnancy are covered under healthcare services. That means services by way of diagnosis for illness, deformity, abnormality are covered under healthcare services. Diagnostic centers are organized facilities to provide diagnostic procedure such as radiological investigation supervised by the radiologist. Now, the report which is coming from the diagnostic center, it is not supervised the radiologist by that diagnostic center because I have my own radiologist, right? So, I have my own setup where I have the diagnostic center whom I have tied up with them. I have tied up with the radiologist, so I am taking the entire responsibility, not covered and not liable to tax. Whether restaurant, canteen, mess, food joints having only takeaway or takeaway or food delivery options and no dining will be considered as a restaurant service, or will it be considered as a supply of goods? Like you have seen McDonald's or pizza and all those things, right? So it's a takeaway services. So you go there, delivery is ready, you take that and move on. Whether it is a supply of goods or whether it is a supply of services, right? So I know now we are talking about the specified services, restaurant services. Will it get covered over here? Okay. So there are two different views on this. The circular which is issued by the board, that circular number 164, clarifies it to be treated as a supply of services. It clarifies that it is a supply of services. But the Madras High Court, in case of Anjar Chettinad AC services and so many people who join together, as there is no element of services provided in takeaways, absence of ambience, etc., classify same as a supply of goods and not service. Are you getting a point? So they are considered as a supply of goods and not service, and therefore the Swiggy and Zomato and all those things who are providing the services which is a takeaway, there is no ambience which is being provided over there, and therefore it is possible to argue that Swiggy and Zomato is not liable to tax as an e-commerce operator. So what is the argument taken under this judgment? It says that once processed and readied for delivery, the parcels are brought to a separate counter and are picked up either by the customer or a delivery service. More often than not, the takeaway counters are positioned away from the main dining area. Okay, that may or may not be air conditioned. In any event, the consumption of food and drink is not in the premises of the restaurant. The provision of food and drink to be taken away in parcel by restaurants tantamount to a sale of food and drink and does not attract service tax. Are you getting a point? So therefore, it is not a possible argument, not covered under the e-commerce operator. Whether e-commerce are liable to reverse ITC on common credits used for restaurant service and other taxable supplied from 1st Jan 2022, like Swiggy's and all those things, they also pay the taxes on the restaurant services. They also provide other services for which they are charging the service tax. Now, since e-commerce operator, what the service they are providing is that they have to reverse their ITC also. The circular says that you are not required to reverse your ITC. The Swiggy and Zomato and all these people are entitled to claim the full input tax credit. Okay, so the e-commerce operator are required to pay GST at 5%. As per the explanation, where the tax 5% paid by restaurant services, then there is a requirement to reverse common ITC proportionately. Now, why this point has come into picture is because If you're paying 5%, then no, without ITC. Restaurant services, if you're paying 5%, then there is no ITC. Now, Zomato have so many ITCs, so many input tax credit. Now, are they required to reverse because they are paying the 5% tax? And that 5% on a proportionality basis, which is paid by the Zomato, Swiggy and all those things, am I required to reverse the input tax credit? Because if you read section 9 subsection 5, I become deemed to be a supplier of services, and therefore, as if I am providing the services, then to the extent of turnover of the restaurant services paid by the e-commerce operator, whatever input tax credit, am I required to proportionately reverse the input tax credit? Okay. One argument can be, yes, you're required to, because you become deemed to be a supplier, and therefore you're required to do that. But circular says that you're not required to reverse the proportionate ITC, because after the circulars, things have become smoother. Is that clear? Everyone? So even though the circular is overriding the provision, but still you can take the benefit of the circular. What would be the aggregate turnover of the person supplying restaurant services through e-commerce operator? Because whatever the services as a restaurant, say for example, Buy to Coffee as supplying the goods through the e-commerce operator, and they are also supplying directly to the customer. What should be the aggregate value? Right? Should I also consider the aggregate value which is supplied through e-commerce operator, because I am not paying any taxes on it. I am not liable to pay any taxes on it. Under section 9(5), it is the e-commerce operator who is liable to pay the tax. Then what should be my total turnover? The law says that even the restaurant services which are supplying the service through the e-commerce operator, that turnover will also be construed as a part of your turnover, aggregate turnover, for the purpose of the law. Okay, so the restaurant person has to include even the services rendered through the e-commerce operator. He has to include, because whether the registration is required or not, whether composition scheme is applicable or not, all those things have to be looked into it. So when you calculate the aggregate total turnover, you have to consider the turnover of e-commerce operator also. Clear? So that's all, in case of Ratan Milton, where the circular is going beyond the stating that even the turnover should be get included. So next, whether e-commerce operator services, that is conveyance fees and transportation charges, can be treated as a composite supply of a passenger transportation service and be taxed together at the rate of 5%, because transportation charges are through the passenger, where 5% is applicable. If other charges which is charged by the e-commerce operator, they have to pay at 18%. Is it possible to argue that even those charges is a part of a composite supply and therefore I'll pay only 5%? Okay. So as per section 9(5), you become deemed to be a supplier. So it says that e-commerce operator made liable only for payment of tax as a supplier, and all other provision of the GST as applicable to the supplier does not apply to him. Also, the fact that the transportation services are not provided by e-commerce operator and are provided by the e-commerce operator will play a role to determine that the conveyance charges levied by e-commerce operator cannot be said to be a composite supply. So these are the arguments which can be put by the department. There's also argument that you need to understand whether is that become a part of the total turnover and you pay only 5% as a composite supply, and you don't have to pay the 18% on the conveyance fee and 5% on the transportation. So there's a possible argument can be taken. Department may say that only to the extent of transportation of passenger is subject to tax at 5%, only to that extent you are deemed to be a supplier and you are required to pay the taxes 5%. All other provisions of the GST law will be applicable to you, and therefore you are required to pay tax even on the conveyance charges at 18% and not at 5%. So both the arguments is possible. Whether same service can be taxed differently. Okay, very interesting. If you the example which I gave is auto rickshaw, where you go take a auto rickshaw per se is exempt from levy of GST. But if the auto rickshaw services is provided through cab, it is taxable under the GST law. Can one argue that the same services which is exempt, just because I'm providing service through e-commerce operator, or as a customer I'm availing through e-commerce operator, am I liable to pay the taxes? Okay. So you have around 2-3 judgments which speaks about, one is favoring the assessee, another against the assessee. However, Uber has filed the writ petition in Delhi High Court, Rapido has filed a writ petition in Telangana, and Make My Trip has filed on the Uber with respect to auto rickshaw, and non-AC buses by Make My Trip and this red bus, they are filed in Delhi High Court, and we have to wait and watch. But they have filed the writ petition. In February 2022, you will get to know what is the outcome of it. So there are 2 judgments. In case of Ayurveda and another versus State of Tamil Nadu, Supreme Court, and Union of India versus Paliwal Electricals against Supreme Court. Now in both the cases, what it says that there is a particular medicine which is exempt. Okay, if you have a particular level of alcohol is exempt from levy of taxes, means it's covered under medicinal preparation and therefore exempt from levy of taxes. The same medicine where alcohol is less, department said that you are not covered because alcohol is less, it is liable to tax at higher rate of tax. Matter went before the court. The court says that whether alcohol is less or not, it's a medicinal preparation. You cannot have a, for one activity liable to tax and another activity not liable to tax. You cannot have that one, and therefore if a particular transaction which is exempt, then it will be exempt across the board, right? It will be exempt across the board. However, against the SSC, there are again 2-3 judgments which says that in case of Siddharth Narayan and Ashirwad Films versus, what does it say? Under service tax, if an artist who's performing in the theatre or a drama, it is exempt from levy of service tax. But an actor who's performing in the films, they are taxable at higher rate of, they are taxable at 18%, right? So matter went before the court. The court says that the government, the executive body, has the power to, depending on the requirement, depending on the requirement, they can issue a notification executing that artist can be, artist who's performing in the film will be liable to tax, but artists in theatre and drama are not liable to. There is a possibilities and they can do that, and it is not violating any of the article, either Article 14 or neither Article 21 of the Constitution of India, and therefore they are well within the power of the legislation and they can issue accordingly. So therefore, the non-AC buses or the auto rickshaw which are exempt if I directly go and take the services, but if I go through the e-commerce operator, then it will be liable to tax. The possibilities are there, but anyhow, there are three writ petition has been filed before the High Court. We have to wait and watch what the outcome could be. Clear? Yeah. There's again Humble Mobile Solutions Private Limited. This is an advanced ruling which says that driver to consumers provision, there are 3 transactions, supply of services. One, they said that I'm providing the services from driver to the customers. Next is e-commerce services to drivers and provision of manpower services by the drivers to the consumers. So there are 3 kind of transactions, which is like you have a driver, you have a customers, you're going to connect to them. So we have seen one, if it has to be through it, right? The same, it was there in case of Humble Mobile Solutions, where advanced rulings have held that you are an e-commerce operator, you are liable to pay the taxes, but you are liable to pay tax only on your fees and not on the entire transaction. You are liable to pay fees only on the whatever your service charges or conveyance charges, what you charge, you have to pay, or not on the entire amount. So this is the, again, advanced ruling which can support. Arrangement between e-commerce operator and the drivers is such that the applicant collects the consideration. Yeah, this is a very interesting part. To market my app, the mobile app or the website or whatever the e-commerce operator, what they do, that they enter into a contract with the cab driver. Okay, that boss, for one ride, I'm going to pay 25 rupees per kilometer, say for example. Okay, the e-commerce operator on its own give the discount to the customer, stating that if you select like first drive or first 5 drives, I give a discount where the per kilometer can be 10 rupees. Are you getting a point? Right? To the driver, I have entered into a contract stating that boss, I am going to pay 25 rupees, but to the to the customers, I am saying 10 rupees. Right? The 15 rupees, whatever it is there, even though I pay 25 rupees to the driver, I pay 25 rupees to the driver, I collect only 10 rupees, this 15 rupees I book it as a marketing expenses. Are you getting a point? Everyone? Right? So this 15 rupees I'll book it as a marketing expenses. Now what happens is that, now am I liable to pay tax on 25 rupees as an e-commerce operator, because I'm covered under specified services, transportation of passenger. I satisfy all the conditions. So am I liable to pay on 25 rupees, or am I liable to pay on 10 rupees, or plus the 15 rupees which I consider as the marketing expenses, where I pay 25 rupees to the driver, am I liable to pay even on that 15 rupees also? Clear? The advance ruling, which clearly says, this is an advance ruling given in case of Gensol Ventures Private Limited by Gujarat, which says that under the law, if a discount is because under section 9(5), what this says, that you become deemed to be a service provider. So when you raise an invoice on the value, total value, whatever discount you give it on the face of the invoice, then that discount is allowed as a deduction. Right? So under GST law, only on 10 rupees you are required to pay the taxes. You're required to pay the taxes. And this 15 rupees, okay, even though you paid driver 25 rupees, 15 rupees what you record as a business expense or a marketing expenses will not be liable to any taxes, because they have relied on the one High Court decision and as well as one CESTAT decisions, which says that held that enforceable reciprocal obligation are essential aspect of a supply, but that cannot be take the color of the service. Similarly, in case of CESTAT Ruchi-Soya, we said that in the context of service tax law, held that it is essential to establish the basic elements of levy of tax. That is, there must be a service provider, there must be a service receiver, the payment of consideration from provider and recipient. So, in the absence of the services, the relationship service provider and recipient, tax cannot be levied, because there is no relationship. Driver is not providing any services to the e-commerce operator, neither e-commerce provider any providing services to the driver. So therefore, that 15 rupees what the driver collects, okay, should not be liable to tax even under the GST law. Is that clear, everyone? So Maharashtra Advance Ruling Authority, this is with respect to valuation and exemption services, okay, holds that applicant is engaged in the business of assisting believers, followers and devotees to book Pandits, Brahmins online for their religious ceremonies like pujas, etc., not exempt under serial number 13 of notification number 12/20,000. Now, you would have seen the apps where you can book pujas, you can book Pandits, you can book for your astrology purpose and all those things, right? So you can carry out all those things through the app. For that, to register, you subscribe, say 2,000 rupees for the subscription fees. Am I clear? Okay. Now there is an exemption under the notification 12/2017, conducting of a religious service is exempt from levy of taxes. So this person, Sadashiv Anaji Sete, went before the advance ruling seeking that the services which are rendered by the Pandits to the devotees, okay, is exempt under section 12/2017, and therefore I should also be exempted and should not be liable to tax. What does the advance ruling has said? It said that conducting of a puja, That means, what do you mean by conducting? Conducting means you should yourself have to conduct it. It is not the third party who's conducting will fall in the definition of the exemption notification. Have you conducted yourself? The answer is no. And therefore, you are an e-commerce operator. You are liable to pay the taxes. Is that clear? And you are liable to pay the taxes on the entire amount. TCS will be applicable. Get the point? Right? Now let's come to the OIDR services. So how much time we have? Till 6 o'clock, or we should leave early? 6 o'clock. Okay. So OIDR services, online information and database access or retrieval services, means services whose delivery is mediated by information technology over the internet. Okay. What this law says? That online information and database access or retrieval services means services, please understand, it is only services and not goods. Okay. Services whose delivery is mediated through IT, that is information technology, over the internet or electronic network, and the nature of which renders their supply essentially automated and involving minimal human intervention and impossible to ensure in absence of information technology. Okay. What does it say? OIDR services, that any services which are supplied through information technology, which is mediated through information technology, and there has to be a minimal intervention of human. Okay. That means everything is monitored by the information technology and not by the human. In that scenario, you will be covered within the definition of online database retrieval services. Like for example, we have a TOL, all those things where there is not much human intervention, or if you are subscribing anything, online games and all those things where there is not much intervention. In such a scenario, you will fall with the definition of online information database access or retrieval services, and includes, they also says, what are those things? Advertising on the internet. So you would have seen so many advertisements on the internet. So if there is any advertisement through the internet, then OIDR services will come into picture. Next, providing cloud services. If you are providing any kind of cloud services, you will be covered under OIDR services. Then provisions of ebooks, like you have Kindles and all those things, right? Ebooks, movie, music, software. Just give me a minute. Or other intangibles through telecommunication network or internet. So here they are also covered the telecommunication network or through internet. Providing data or information retrievable or otherwise to any person in electronic form through a computer network. Online supplies of digital content like movies, television, all those things, digital data storage, and online gaming. So if you fall in any of this category, if you are providing any of these services, then OIDR services will come into picture. Are you getting a point? So any services with IT, human intervention should be low or it should be minimal. You are covered under OIDR services, and including these specified services will be construed to be a OIDR services. So section 14 of the IGST Act clearly, there is a special provision for OIDR services which levy the taxes. What does it say? On supply of OIDR services by any person located in a non-taxable territory. That means any person who is located in outside India and received by a non-taxable online recipient. Please understand here, he is talking about a non-taxable online recipient. Okay. The supplier of services located in a non-taxable territory shall be the person liable for paying integrated tax on such supply of services. So this OIDR services will come into picture only in respect of those service provider who's located outside India, second, they have to provide services to a non-taxable online recipient. Am I clear on this? In such a scenario, import of service will not come into picture, because if you see the definition of import of services under supply, under section 7, it says import of service whether for the purpose of business or not, whether for furtherance of business or not, it will be covered as an import of services. Okay. Now, if you want to subscribe a journal from, say, London or from wherever, a legal journal, then the journal which you get online, as an individual, if I'm a registered, then under import of services, under RCM, I'm required to pay the taxes. But as an individual, I'm not a registered person, the department cannot catch me. And department cannot catch the other party also, who's located outside India. So what they are saying that, if you are supplying the services where the payment is made through, because obviously there will be a foreign exchange, right? RBI will get to know that there is a foreign exchange which is happening through the bank. So therefore, that party who's supplying the services is required to pay the taxes. The responsibility will be on the service provider and not on the service recipient. Even though under import of service I'll be covered, but as an individual, I do fall in the definition of a non-taxable online recipient. Are you getting a point? Right? What do you mean by non-taxable online recipient? So the definition says, under 2 subsection 16 of IGST law, it says that means any government. Okay? So if government buys any Microsoft license from outside India, or if the government buys anything online, all these activities, right? Then it is the service provider who has to who has to pay the taxes, or local authority. Who is a non-taxable online recipient? One is any government, local authority, or governmental authority, or an individual or any other person not registered and receiving OIDR services in relation to any purpose other than commerce, industry, or any other business or profession located in taxable territory. So, what does the law says? The law says that if an individual or any other person who is not registered, but if he is procuring these services, OIDR services, for the purpose of business, then import of service will come into picture. Recipient will be liable to pay the tax. Are you getting a point? The recipient will be liable to pay the tax because he will be covered under import of services. But if he is not for the purpose of business, he is an individual or any other person not registered, or a government or a local authority or governmental authority. What do you mean by governmental authority? It says that the expression governmental authority means any authority or board or any other body set up by an act of parliament or a state legislature or establishment by any government with 90% or more participant by way of equity or control to carry out any function entrusted to panchayat under Article 243G or to a municipality under Article 243W, like BBMP. Right? So it's a governmental authority. So if they are procuring any kind of services from outside India, then government is not liable to pay tax, or the governmental authority is not liable to, or an individual per se not liable to tax. The service provider is required to pay the taxes. So what does the law says? The law clearly says that the supplier shall, make the payment for IGST, take a single registration under a simplified registration scheme and discharge the liability. That means the ODR service provider has to take himself registered in India and discharge the liability. Is that clear, everyone? If he is not able to, if his representative is there, then he will discharge on behalf of the OIDR services. If even he doesn't have the representative, then he has to appoint any person who will discharge the liability. Am I clear on this? Everyone? Right? So, in case of OIDR services, they are required to get himself registered, discharge the liability, and all the laws will come into picture. Right? All the laws will come into picture. Now, the So these are some of the issues which thought I could able to address on this one. If you have any further queries, please ask me. Or 2 more issues or 3 more issues which we can take it up and we can take it forward. Any issues till now? Clear? Yes, sir. हाँ हाँ e-commerce operator also, yes.
Apply for him. As you said, I need to take, means the chart vendor has to take the
No, chart vendor
register.
cannot go for composition scheme at all.
Means, okay,
He cannot. If the moment he won even 1 rupee through e-commerce, he cannot go through the composition scheme.
then
Till wait 1st October 2023. Recently, the council have if you see this 49th council meeting, this was already addressed before them, and they have said that boss, yeah, in 47th meeting already decision taken. Because of the software and all those things, 1st October 2023, they'll allow the composition dealer also. Otherwise, your composition scheme is gone. You have to pay full rate of tax.
full rate of the tax means once he take the registration, he need to pay the tax. Then the e-commerce operator will not take the charge of. I mean, the e-commerce operator will not charge for the vendor. Means the person who sells like a chat vendor, he needs to charge the charge for that. I mean,
See,
forward charges.
is he registered under restaurant services
Yeah,
chart,
yeah,
right? Without this one, 5% it is there,
correct.
services.
Correct.
The e-commerce operator will discharge. What you are supplying without ITC, 5%, this is what you're going to charge also.
Correct.
So covered.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir, individual who is registered under the GST for rent receipts.
Rent receipts.
Now he subscribes for Time magazine.
Huh.
Does he have to pay RCM?
Yes. RCM will come into picture. Import of services,
But
covered
it's
under
nothing to do with
OIDR
business.
services, covered.
It is not used for business, just for his personal thing.
Then OIDR you have to differentiate. You should be able to justify that this is not for business purpose, I am an individual and therefore not for business purpose, you'll be out of it.
But then how Time magazine will pay?
They have to register here. They will be registered, Time Magazine, because not only you, there are across the board so many people are subscribing for it. So they will register themselves and they will carry out the business.
And in their bill they will put that GST.
Yes. So you would have seen, you would have purchased Microsoft license as an individual. You would have seen there is a GST.
But there is a local,
No.
there is a Microsoft.
They have
API
registered in local. Even though you have gone to the Microsoft, say Singapore, got the license from there, but still you will see the GST registration. Because they have to register and discharge the liability under OIDR services. Are you getting a point?
Yeah. But okay, Time and maybe Microsoft are big organizations.
Ha.
There could be very small organizations in US or England or
They have
Europe.
to. They have to. They have to. Okay? They have to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, my client is having an app
Huh.
where he hosts people who take tuitions for 10th grade and all. Like online, they share tips and they share questions. And there are a lot of subscribers. Each of them pay like 100 rupees, 50 rupees kind of thing. So these are all micro payments that accrue to the channel owner. So in this case, is there any TCS liability on the e-commerce operator being the app owner?
See, now what happens is that, good example for you. First, always try to understand in case of e-commerce operator, are you a specified service provider? Are you under 52? Right?
Yeah.
So these 4 categories, you are out of it. So don't bother about it. Now let's come to the TCS. Are you providing services online by yourself or you have tied up with so many institutions? Through their online, are you providing to the students?
Yes.
Are you getting a point? So if it is through the other people, there where you are tied up with them, you collect 100 rupees, retain 20 rupees, balance you transfer to them. Then TCS might come into picture.
Oh, it might have to be done.
Yeah, it might come into picture.
But because
Again-
it's so impractical to do TDS for micro payments.
TDS under income
No,
tax.
TCS I'm saying.
TCS, yes. TCS will come into picture. Okay. So you have to pay discharge 1% on that. But again, if you are able to structure in such a way, like I have given 2-3 advanced ruling, which are in favor of assessee, there are possibilities that you might come out of it. But
Oh.
you have to do it in a proper manner.
Okay, we can restructure the transaction itself. Possible.
So as I told you, like in case of driver and the, he's only providing the facility of business in case of multiverse. The Advanced Ruling Karnataka Advanced Ruling Authority, what they said that it is not through the e-commerce operator. He is only facilitator for providing the services of making two people to connect each other. That is the buyer and the supplier. That's all. I don't have any other control on it. It is between both of them. Then they said that Section 9(5) is not applicable.
So
And-
similar is the case with MyGate app or
Ah.
these apps. So we pay all our this maintenance through the app. And the maintenance is given to this housing society. But even then the
TCS will
MyGate doesn't do TCS.
They will.
They are not, because they are saying they are not an e-commerce operator.
Then we need to understand the entire business of there. See, again, I'm telling you, you should be very careful in case of an e-commerce operator, whether you will be get covered or you will not be get covered. Okay? There are certain situations where you can say that, yes, you are not get covered there.
So, but what is
Only-
the basic condition that you say that it is
Like in case of
necessary for
MyGate, he's acting as an agent.
agent?
He's acting as an agent. Therefore, only on the commission he will pay the taxes and not on the entire amount doing the TCS.
Oh, okay.
Because 52 says that agent is not covered. Agent are out of it.
Out of it.
Correct?
Correct.
So like for example, e-auctioneer. Okay? I'm a e-auctioneer. Through portal, I do the e-auction.
Correct.
Through the portal, this is a live example. Through the portal, I do the e-auction of all the waste, scraps and everything across India. Okay? So I have the supplier. I have the reputed buyer on that because e-waste have to be discharged or disposed of in a certain way. Because there is a law which governs that. So this app developer, they are specialized in that. So they do the e-auction. Here, e-auction, if you see the definition, auction is an agent. Auctioneer is an agent which is covered within the definition. So therefore, I'm out of 50 to 1. The TCS is not applicable.
Yeah, similar could be with the Agoda and bookings.com websites also. No?
Could be. Unless we understand the facts properly, please, okay? If you give me the facts, yes, no, we can tell whether TCS is applicable
Depending
or not.
on the agreement, what they have.
All those things we have to see. Depending on the agreement, depending on all the transactions, you have to analyze it and take a call whether TCS is applicable or not. Are you getting it? Okay. Yes, sir.
So I want to understand the implications in the case of shared mobility services. So I'll just take an example. I'm an e-commerce operator. I satisfy the definition of an e-commerce operator. I have an app. So shared mobility services means, let's say you're staying in Vijayanagar and you have your office in Electronic City. Even I am also staying in Vijayanagar, same office in Electronic City. You go by your car.
Correct.
So you can give me a lift. But we both will get connected through the app that I have built. That is the shared mobility
Correct.
service. But here the business model is in such a way that the person who is taking the service cannot pay directly to the other person.
Correct.
As in the case of Ola or any other cab aggregator service where we can make direct payment to the drivers. Here the person will have to pay to the app, which is the operator. And the e-commerce operator in turn will give some points kind of a thing to the person who is providing the service.
Correct.
Those points have certain restriction. Basically, they can use them only to buy fuel or something or do maintenance for the vehicle. It is a very restricted use case.
Fair enough.
In this business model, can we consider that the entire consideration is being received by the e-commerce operator only? And hence, e-commerce operator has to pay GST on the full amount of service. Or he takes a cut out of it, let's say 10%. I receive
From whom?
from the service receiver. So 1, there is a service receiver, 2, there is a service provider, and 3, there is an e-commerce.
Correct.
So e-commerce has connected both of them through its app.
Correct.
Let's say 100 rupees is the service fee.
100 rupees is the service fee.
Okay. The service receiver will will pay 100 rupees to the e-commerce.
Okay.
E-commerce will retain 10 rupees, assuming 10% is the commission. 90 rupees worth of fuel points are transferred to the service provider. Entire 100 rupees is taken by e-commerce operator only. Then there is a conversion which will happen in terms of currency. It is not the actual money that is transferred. So now, should the GST be paid only on 10 rupees, that is the commission retained, or should it be paid on entire 100 rupees by the e-commerce operator?
Okay, understood. So his question is that there is a who has a car. Okay, if I'm wrong, let me know. So there is a who has a car who stays in Vijayanagar. There is a B who doesn't have a car, but he's registered with the app. Okay, there's a sharing app, and A is also registered with the sharing app. Now, B who doesn't have a car, he makes 100 rupees payment to the sharing app, and the app connects to A. Now, A will get 90 rupees worth of points.
Correct.
He doesn't get the worth of, basically he'll get a voucher, which can
Yes.
be encashed, okay, through this one. So, if you see the definition of a supply includes kind also.
Yes, agreed.
Agreed? Now his question, the entire thing is that, am I liable to pay tax on the entire 100 rupees, or am I liable to pay tax on the 10? Are you getting a point? Now, first we have to go, are you covered under section 9, subsection 5? Are you covered under 52 as a TCS?
Okay.
Okay. Are you covered under 9? Are you a cab operator? Are you registered with the cab operator? Are you, transportation of passenger by way of, what does it says? Okay. Transportation of passenger by a radio taxi, motor cab, maxi cab, or any other motor vehicle. So you are covered over any other motor vehicle. So you are specifically under the specified services.
Okay, I do fall under the definition of any of those vehicles mentioned, considering the Motor Vehicles Act 1988 ka definitions. But the basic question would be, is it transportation of passengers really?
So we'll come to that, no?
Okay.
We'll come to that. So we have to go one by one. Sure. Okay. So is it a motor vehicle? We're covered under, right?
Agreed.
Next is services by way of transportation of passenger. So Mr. A who is a passenger here? Mr. B. Can you call him as a passenger? Answer to that is yes, he is a passenger. Okay. Where Mr. App is connecting to A, who's transporting the B. For transportation through motor vehicle, passenger means the individual, a human being, right? Are you getting it? So the passenger who moves from location Vijayanagar to Electronic City, for that he pays, passenger B pays 100 rupees to the app. Okay. Why A is providing that services? Because in return he gets a consideration worth of 90. It can be in points or in input. So he is a transporting the passenger. Do you agree with this?
Okay.
Okay. So he do fall within the definition of a specified services. He will not be covered under section 52. Once he falls under the definition of 52, now let's come to the e-commerce operator. So is he collecting the subscription fees, or does he take the share app takes the responsibility of providing the entire services as if he is a service provider, transporter of passenger? Okay. Does it take the entire responsibility or not? So you need to understand that. Is it through it? There are conditions. If you see in the multiverse, what the advanced ruling has said, that there is a driver, there is a cab driver, and there is a customer. His job is only to connect. That's how my business model is. It is not that my responsibility. It is their problem. They will look into it and they will take care of it. If something goes wrong, who is the responsible? Here it is the app is the responsible, the share app.
Correct.
Right? So there are possibilities that covered under 9 fee, liable to pay tax on the entire 100 rupees. Possibilities. Again, we have to see the agreement. We have to understand their entire, conditions, terms and conditions. Based on that, you can take a call whether they are liable on entire or only on 10 rupees.
Okay. Thank you.
You got my point?
Yeah. Thank you.
No. That is under the income tax law. So under 194O, if you see the CBDT circular, they clearly says that payment has to route through that. But under the GST law, agent need not, that payment has to route it through you only. What does the law says? Now I'll take you through the definition of agents, okay? See the definition of agent, which is defined under section 2, subsection 5. It says that means any person, including XYZ, okay, who carries on the business of supply or receipt of goods or services or both on behalf of another. Okay, who carries on the business on behalf of another, who supply goods or services on behalf of another, then he'll be considered as an agent. Are you getting it? So if you are an agent, you are out of the TCS. Now whether that supply of goods or service is under specified services, you have to look into it. If no, then you are out of it. So there's no agent relationship transaction. It is always a principal to principal transaction. Always it will be a principal to principal. So you need to, that's what I'm telling you, in case of an e-commerce, please understand the terms and conditions. Please understand what kind of an agreement they have entered into, and thereafter you take a call. Whether liable or not liable. Just like that, you cannot take a call and say that, boss, yes, TCS is applicable or e-commerce is applicable operator and therefore liable. No, need not be. You would have seen so many advanced rulings which have said that, no, you are not liable. Like in case of Pandit, the Puja app which I told you, right? There the advanced ruling authority have said that you are an agent and therefore you have to pay only on the commission part as a commission, and the other party you are not liable to pay tax only, because the Pandit fellow who's conducting his religious services is anyway exempt. So on the commission part you paid. Right?
Sir, to continue on the 100 rupees and 90 rupees case.
Yes, sir.
If we pay tax on 900 rupees, then will you also be eligible for RCM on 90 rupees?
There's no RCM. No?
There's reverse tax. No, he is paying that person who is driving the person A, he gets 90 rupees worth of
Points.
Points.
Correct.
Which means on that he is not paying GST.
Sorry?
On that he is not paying. He's not a registered.
He's an individual.
Yeah, he's not registered.
Up to 20 lakhs, there is an exemption,
No,
not
but,
liable.
But this person who is handling this app, he's paying that 90 rupees, and he's not, the person who is receiving is not charging him GST. So the app handler will be eligible for RCM?
No, not RCM. He has to pay on 100 rupees, he has to pay tax.
No, that is payment.
Under 95.
But
No
can
RCM.
Can he claim RCM on the 90 rupees?
Who?
The app handler.
How RCM it will come? He is only making the payment balance to him. He
Without
covered
GST.
under 95.
No, without
If you are
GST.
covered under 95, no RCM. Okay? And RCM services, 95 will not come into picture. This is also clarification. Okay, I have not covered that point. RCM services like legal services and all those things, then if there is an RCM to the end customer who is also a registered person XYZ, then e-commerce operator 95 will not come into picture. Am I clear on this? Okay, just to add your point. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The GST which is levied on the commission and the convenience fees by the e-commerce operator, can the service provider take that input credit? Let's say the e-commerce operator, they charge only the commission amount and the convenience
Correct.
fees, right? On which they collect the GST. Now
Correct.
this service provider, can he take the input credit?
Absolutely, he can
Okay.
take that. He can take the input tax credit.
Thank you.
No, there is no doubt in that. He can take the input tax credit. Okay, but you please understand what are the services which are come into picture. Okay, only specified services where full tax is coming. He has to specify under 95, you have to pay the tax, right? Or TCS. If it is TCS, whatever TCS amount done by the e-commerce operator, entire amount goes under the electronic cash ledger. So you are out of 52.1. Now come to 95. It is on the total amount he makes the taxes. If it is a registered, then e-commerce operator need not have to pay the taxes. Are you getting a point? So ITC is only on the commission, then he is not an e-commerce operator, he is only an agent. Right? So then agent who's charging, that means agent is providing a service to the service provider. So it's a normal transaction, he would be entitled to claim the ITC. That's how you need to analyze it. Got it? Right? Anything else? Okay. The few things which I want to also put it. Now, we have understood the OIDR services. Okay. We have understood the TCS and we also understood the specified services. Now, a e-commerce operator providing these specified services from foreign country. So from foreign country, from non-taxable territory. Is he also, will he be covered under OIDR services or will he covered under, say for example TCS or under the specified under 9.5? Again, you have to look into which provision gets attracted. If it is 9.5 or if it is 52, then he has to come here, get registered and pay taxes as per 9.5 or as per 52.1. Else, if he is covered under OIDR services, then 52 and 9.5 will not come. Because under GST law, if you see, we have section 5, subsection 5. Similar to section 9, we have a section 5. Same provision has been prescribed, same notification for services has been notified even under the IGST law also. Point 1. Point 2, under section 20 of the IGST, there are so many provisions which are covered under CGST law, the same mutatis mutandis applicable even under the IGST law. So under section 20, they have covered even TCS also. Are you getting a point? So TCS also, IGST will be there. Need not be that it has to be intrastate only. Even in interstate also, there will be a possibility where TCS will come into picture, IGST will come into picture. So you have to keep in mind. Similarly, even in specified services, if the transaction is from one state to another state where the taxable supply is not happening in that particular state, from that state taxable supply is not happening, then there is a possibility that IGST law will come into picture and not the CGST and SGST. Similarly, if a foreign e-commerce operator is carrying out the business of either 9.5 or under section 52, then he has to get registered and follow the procedure as specified under 9.5 or 52.1. If he is covered under OIDR services, then he will be registered under OIDR services. And also please understand, across India for OIDR services, he has to register only in Bangalore. There is no other state across India for OIDR services. Specifically, he has to register in Bangalore only. That means Bangalore jurisdiction. Are you getting a point? For OIDR services. Okay? It is only in the state of Karnataka, that is Bangalore. Across India for OIDR services. Clear? Everyone? Any other things? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me opportunity. Sorry? We have been discussing on this, and we can move further. And because tomorrow is 25th, Merry Christmas to everyone, and everyone are eager to, go home. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Naveen sir. Definitely everything which is good has to come to an end. And of course, the last session ended with your session as an icing of the cake. Definitely, I think all of them enjoyed the 2 days conference. Thank you, members. Firstly, I would like to thank you on behalf of Bangalore branch of SISC for even in your busy schedule, you took up this and definitely encouraged us to, and having your session in our term this is the first time we are having your session in our term. It was a very enlightening session. Thank you. I request Treasurer Manjunath Hallur to come up on the dais and hand over a memento as a token of gratitude and respect. Thank you. I would also call upon representative of Bharat Cloud, who were the sponsor for our 2 days seminar. On the dais, I request our treasurer to hand them a memento. My thanks are due to my staffs as well, who've been completely working to put up the show for the last 2 days, and the event hall as well and our technicians who have worked towards making this session, 2 days session, a great success. And definitely thanks. Without going, it says the first priority is yes, our members whom we are, this is this is the need of the hour CP conference. And as I've already told that there'll be a couple of CP sessions next week as well, which is virtually, so you can take it offline and utilize this opportunity. I thank everyone. Wishing you a Merry Christmas. Good night. Good evening.